welcome to IGP Chronicles. My name is Jaquasia, and the last four letters are Asia, if you ever are unsure on how to say it, Jaquasia. And I have filmed this particular video, I think 4 times. Four? Maybe three, either way, too many. The first time was just, I don't know what it was. The last time was in the van, and the audio was, which I was pretty sure that was going to happen. The audio was just not good. However, I did get pretty comfortable filming and talking to the camera, it's really awkward to talk to the camera just flat out, unless you're like one of those people. And I'm not, because I hate the sound of my voice on recordings. So it was awkward for me. And although the video is trash because the audio ain't good, it definitely helped me kind of get used to just like looking at the lens and talking and pretending like somebody's there. So even if nobody watches this, I can at least pretend that somebody is. Okay, so that's good. So basically, I just kind of wanted to introduce myself and kind of give you an overview of what to expect on this podcast. We are going to say less. We're going to say less. So I think I have maybe three main goals when it comes to this podcast. Obviously, it's called IGP Chronicles. IGP, formerly known as IPO, formerly known as Schutzen. So it's a German dog sport that originally was made for breeding, specifically the German Shepherd dog. However, now it's a sport and different breeds are involved. My husband and I both compete, Chris, and he started with American Bulldogs, Rottweilers. He then jumped to German Shepherd dogs and now has a giant Schnauzer. I also started with a Rottweiler, and now I have German Shepherds and I have a giant Schnauzer myself. So we're pretty eclectic. We're not stuck to just the one breed. Although some days. So basically, I am 33 years old. Whew, that hurts to say a little bit. But I've been in the sport since I was about 18, 19. And I have seen it grow a ton. Obviously, social media is like, I've grown up with social media. So it's something that has just kind of become like, that's a weird, uncomfortable way to say. Okay, so I've grown up with social media. So I kind of understand maybe a bit more than my other half the significance of it and how important it is, especially when you're trying to encourage the younger generation to get involved in the sport, because obviously that's the only way the sport grows and stays alive. It's really hard right now if you wanted to just search some facts about IGP. There's not one way to get all of your information easily, or even get like a very generalized idea of what's happening. Yes, there's videos all over YouTube about like, this is IGP and like IGP for beginners, and that's great. However, if you really wanted to know like the behind the scenes of the sport, like what it encompasses and equipment and, you know, vehicle talk and what's going on right now, like current events, what championship everybody's prepping for, what dogs people are talking about, you know, there's not a way to do that besides going on the IPO training group on Facebook. And even that group, I feel like, has become slightly stagnant in recent years. And there's just not a lot of discussion about what's going on, or enough to where people can actually like learn something. So I really want this to be like, you know, we're talking about the rule book, current events again, what it means to be a good club member, whatever else like topics we can kind of come up with, how to maximize your points. If there's a rule change, like talk about that, or just maybe a topic that everybody is discussing right now, just to kind of make sure that whatever is happening in the IGP world right now is being talked about more. And again, just trying to bring the younger generation in. I feel like there is a big age gap in our sport. And I feel like unless you grew up in the sport, there's not a lot of 20-year-olds that are in the sport. And that's kind of concerning, considering like that's who carries it on after, after the older generation is just not able to do it anymore, I guess, or they have to pass it on to somebody, right? And I know somebody said, well, it takes money to be in the sport. It takes time. It takes all this stuff that 20-year-olds don't have. Sorry. Like I mentioned, I've been in the sport since I was 18. And when I got into the sport, I got in with another group of people I was working with. We were all 19, 20 when we got in the sport. We didn't have no money. We were living home, yes, but we were all going to school full time and working full time. And yes, IGP takes money. However, there's a way to do it without it being an obscene amount of money. And we went to every New England regional. Oh, me specifically, I went to every New England regional from 2011 till 2018 when I moved down here. Okay, every year found a way to make it happen. Whether I had to share a room with like 3, 4, 5 other people, didn't matter. Carpool. Maybe you don't get to eat steak, you just get off the dollar menu, but there's a way to do it. You just have to be humble about it and be like, well, I'm about to share a room with 4 other people because it's cheaper, and we're going to stuff 3 dogs in a car and 3 people and 3 suitcases and go. And that it is what it is. So I don't agree with the thing that the money is what's stopping younger kids or younger adults from getting into the sport, because it can be done. We did it. And it was rough some days, but we did it. Maybe our gear at the time wasn't as nice as our gear now, but that's what happens as part of growing up. We made the time. Like I said, we were working full time, going to school full time, still made time to train our dogs and make club days. Twice a week we were making club days. So it can be done when you're that age if you really want it. And just because you're young, that doesn't really mean anything, because even as I've gotten into my 30s, like, I still have to make time. I still have to make money to do the sport. In fact, I need to make more money because I don't have help from my parents. Like, I'm not living home, right? So that argument, no, I just don't think there's a lot of positive talk about IGP to where people are just hearing all the negative all the time, and they're just seeing all the drama, or this person said and this person said. And yeah, I'm not saying like I haven't listened to the gossip or been like, my last mentor, Gary, loves to gossip. I don't know if I could say that, but he does. But that's not the point. There's gossip, there's negativity, there's bad people in any hobby you pick. I don't care what hobby you pick. There's gonna be somebody that is not a good person and doesn't do it a certain way and loves to gossip or loves the drama. That's just part of life. So this constant rhetoric that the dog world is this huge problem, that's just the world. Like, deal with it, okay? And if you don't like the negativity, then don't engage in it, and just, push it to the side and keep it moving. So unfortunately, though, that is what is talked about, is the negativity instead of like the positive side to things. I have met some really, really bomb people in this world. Like, truly good people, like to the heart, like just cool people. I have seen people who like kind of grow up in the sport, and like maybe at one point they weren't a good person, and like now they've grown up and like become a good person and like just changed and evolved. And it's like, okay, you did that. Like, it's cool to see you like grow up and become an adult. Like, I love that for you. There are good people in the sport. You just have to find them and talk about them more than you're talking about the people that you don't like. Now, I'm not saying don't talk about the people, because if they're doing shady stuff, absolutely, like, say it. But then, like, balance, right? Talk about, like, they're shady, however, go hang out with this person, they're not shady. So I guess that's my second point, is shining a light on the positive side of the sport and showing people that there is a positive side. It's not just all kind of this negativity that we see. I guess my fourth point, so I do have 4 points, 4 goals. It's my goal. 4 goals is, I feel like now, like, and not just in the IGP world, just like in general, if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and you disagree, automatically arguing. And that's not always the case. You just disagree. And it's so hard to disagree. And even if you try to do it respectfully, it's still seen, or can be seen or perceived as arguing. And I hate that, because it just doesn't allow a space for actual debating and discussion. And it doesn't let you have a different opinion than somebody else, because you're stamped as argumentative or confrontational. And that's so annoying. Especially, like, for me, clearly I talk on my hands. Y'all see these hands, they going. And a lot of times, if I'm getting passionate about something, my rings just got hooked together. If I'm getting passionate about something, my tone normally gets more blunt, because I don't want to add too much emotion to it. I want to try to be very, like, to the point with what I'm saying. And I generally just talk loud because I'm excited that you're talking about something I care about with me. However, it can be perceived as, again, confrontational, I think is the best word for that, and very aggressive. When it's not, it's just passion, and, like, I'm like, oh yeah, you want to have a discussion? Like, bet. Okay, let's go. Like, what you saying? What's your point? Let me hear your point. Okay, cool. Like, this is my point. I love that kind of back and forth talk. And so I get excited, which then means my volume goes up. And I am working on that. And I do want people in my life to point that out to me more and be like, hey, volume control. Because I don't realize it, because my family talks loud. And in our house, you just talk loud. Everybody talks loud. This person's talking loud, and this person's talking just as loud. And then this person talks a little louder, so then this person laughs louder, so then this person has to yell from the other. So that's just like Bernie Mac said, because we black, we talk loud, we blah, blah. I love when Bernie Mac says that. But, like, I'm from New York and I'm black. Like, we talk loud and we talk like this, and that's, But I don't actually have that harsh of a New York accent. I wish I did some days, but I don't. I just got a regular New York accent, a regular accent. But sorry for the sidebar. Let's go back. We were having a discussion back in December about a situation that had happened at the 2023 Southeast IGP Regional Championship, which was hosted by North Beach Schützen, which is the club that I'm a part of. The club takes place right out on that front lawn. So I was having a discussion about something I wasn't aware happened, because nobody said anything to me or to Chris. Both of us were, like, the trial chair people. Mostly, I guess, kind of me, because he was kind of, like, running around doing stuff, and then he had to lay tracks on Sunday. But nobody told either of us about the situation, which we will discuss on another episode. And I was just kind of frustrated, because I was like, man, like, number one, I apologize that happened. I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. Like, but if you don't tell me, I can't stop it from happening again. And that was my point. And I was having the discussion. Afterwards, Chris said to me, like, well, you guys were kind of arguing. And I was like, we weren't arguing. Like, we are both passionately explaining our point. I was talking to Jacob, and during the argument, I distinctly remember I was working very hard to listen to everything he said. I didn't interrupt him. I think one time I almost did, and then I caught myself or something. And he let me say my side of things. And then a couple other, actually, I don't think anybody else interjected besides the other Chris. And so we were having the discussion, but I guess our volume was louder than we had realized. But I'm also half deaf because I've been working with dogs for 15 years. So I can't hear great to begin with. But I thought we were just like, I mean, yes, the tone was very serious because I was very disappointed that it had happened and that nobody had told me. And his point, was there's nothing I could do about it. It wasn't my fault and blah, 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 blah. And I remember distinctly partway through, I said to him, like, I'm not trying to be like argumentative because I do respect you. And he was saying, oh, I respect you too. This is an argument. We're just talking. However, we're both passionate about like the situation and trying to make it all better. But everybody else at the table, you could tell, was like super uncomfortable because they thought we were arguing when we weren't. We were just having a discussion. And nobody thought, though, to say within the moment, like, hey, guys, like, take it down a notch. Instead, not everyone, but a couple people just kind of like looked away instead of like being involved in the conversation. And it's like, it's kind of frustrating. Everybody that was at the table are competitors, high level competitors. I think I was like one of the people on the low end of the totem pole at that table. And so it would have been nice to hear everybody else kind of chime in and like their points and like what they agreed with, what they disagreed with, what they thought, what's happened in their experience. However, instead they just were like, oh, I don't want to get into this discussion. It's like, no, let's have the discussion. Like, let's talk. This similar thing happened at our club like 2 Saturdays ago, where Chris and I were having a discussion. And listen, if you train with your significant other, it's difficult because sometimes how you would say it to somebody else, you don't want to say it to that person because, you gotta go home with them later on and you don't want to hurt their feelings. But sometimes you just gotta say it how you gonna say it. And that's what happened a couple Saturdays ago. We were having a discussion about tracking. And when we got back to the field, he said to everybody, hey, like, if that happens again, like, you guys don't have to, like, run away and, like, think that we're arguing. We're not arguing. We're having a discussion about a situation, and you guys might be able to chime in, or you might learn something. So don't think that just because our voices are elevated and the tone may sound a little harsh, that's exactly what's happening. It's just a discussion. It's just a discussion about dog training, and after, we're just gonna like move on. There's nothing like, no like aftertaste. That's not the right word, but it's kind of what I mean. Like, we had the discussion, we hashed it out, okay, move on. The problem, I think, is when you don't have those discussions and it lingers and then it lingers and then it lingers and then kaboom, it blows up. So I rambled a little bit is what it is. However, I think that's like my biggest thing is like, I just am tired of not having discussions. And we have helpers come in from time to time. Well, once a month we have a helper come in and we kind of alternate helpers, and every now and then we have like a guest helper featuring. But we kind of stick to working with the same helper so that it's very cohesive, everything that's happening, and they know our dogs and they know us and they know what we're working towards, so we don't have to explain it every single time. We're not having new helpers who are constantly switching our program. But the thing I love the most when we have these helpers come in is when we get to go to eat after, or, they're working dogs all day. They get done, they want to eat and they want to relax because they're going to have to do it again the next day. And so there's a lot of downtime in the evening where you're just kind of like hanging out. However, every time we have somebody in, they want to talk dogs, which is great because we love talking about dogs or we want to watch a video on working dog or YouTube or talk about this. So there's just a lot of talk about either what happened that day or, we watch a video and we talk about it. And those open discussions, we respect each other enough to be like, we don't agree, but that's your point, and I can respect and understand what you're saying, and you can respect and understand what I'm saying. And okay, let's move on to the next thing to talk about. And I truly love those moments when we have the helpers come in, is that talk after, because they have a wealth of knowledge and I want to hear like what their point of view is, or, they trained with this person and that's what, like, this is what they said and this is why. So I love those moments, and I just don't feel like we get those moments enough in the sport. Like, everyone's afraid to talk and disagree. And I hate that. I really hate that. It's okay to disagree. It's so okay to disagree with each other. You just have to be respectful. Absolutely have to be respectful. It's okay to have your own thoughts about things, and I believe it should go this way. Another kind of like sub reason I started this podcast is because over the last, I want to say 2 to 3 years, maybe over the last 2 years, yeah, 2.5 years, I became okay with the fact of, okay, I've learned a lot in the sport, and I've learned from a lot of different people, and I have a lot of knowledge, and there's a lot I haven't learned. But there's a lot I want to try and see if I'm right, or maybe I'm not. And if it blows up in my face, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with the fact that I tried something that I thought was going to work and I failed. And it started with the dumbbells with Zakan. And Chris is really good at doing dumbbells, and he did GG's. And I had done Kira's, my first dog that I titled. He had done GG's because I just felt like I couldn't do it properly. So he started it for me and did the initial pressure part and the release part and all that. And then I took over afterwards. But I sat there and I watched him do it. I watched every session. I watched and I watched and I watched. Okay, understand, got it. So when it came time to do Zakan's, he automatically assumed he would do it just because he had helped everybody or done everybody's, first part of their dumbbells. However, I was like, no. I want to do it with this dog because I feel like I can read this dog very well. And based on me doing Kira's and watching you do GG's and dog after dog after dog, I felt like I could do it. However, I wanted to change it a little bit. And that became, also did not communicate this properly, but that became kind of an awkward spot to where he was like, well, why don't you want me to do it? Like, I can do it. Absolutely. I know you can do it, but can I do it? Can I do it? Can I change it and make it better? Or will my changes not transfer properly? And once I explained that to him, that like I wanted to do it after learning and seeing if I could improve, and I was 100% okay if I did it and it failed. And then once I explained that to him, he was like, oh, that all makes sense. Yeah, like, of course you want to try to do it on your own after watching me. You don't just want me to do it for the rest of your life. I can't anyway. That makes sense. But the fact that I was okay if it failed. And that's like the hardest point, is like, if you're trying to do something, you have to be okay with what happens if it goes wrong. And when people hear you say, I want to do it this way, and I'm okay with it going wrong and me being wrong, and it could like alter this dog's entire career, I'm ready for that, like that kind of guilt. They're like, ooh, that's serious. Yeah, but how else am I going to call myself a dog trainer if I'm not okay with failing at some point? And obviously I'm okay with failing, because if y'all see my scorebooks from any one of my dogs, I'm okay with failing. But I've learned a lot. I've learned a ton from failing. But but I'm okay with it. And Zakan is a super, super nice dog. And it's scary when you have that kind of dog because you don't want to mess it up because, like, that's a dog that could, potentially be on the podium. His genetics say he can. His drives say he can. He's intelligent. Everything says he could be there. So now it's on me not to mess it up. But if I let everyone dictate how I should train the dog, can I really call myself a trainer? I don't think so. But once they hear that I'm okay if it goes wrong, they're like, okay, well, you want to take the blame? Let's do it your way. Cool. And not that I don't listen to other people's, I absolutely want their feedback. However, at the end of the day, this is my dog and I do step on the field with this dog. So the blame will be put on me in the end. So I want to make sure it's something that when I step on the field and it goes wrong, I can say that was my fault. I don't want you to blame the helper. I don't want you to blame my training partner. I don't want you to blame. Nope, that was 100%. That was me. Not the dog, not anybody else. It was me. And then I can say, okay, well, you were wrong about this. Let's reevaluate the situation and go through the other options that you thought maybe weren't quite right and see what you think may work now. And that's dog training. But if you sit there and you just do what you're told forever and ever and ever, and you never branch out, then you're not really training a dog. You're just a little sheep going along with what everybody tells you to do. And at some point in your career, you have to be a sheep. You do. And when I was living in Connecticut and when I was living in New York, I spent 5 years at my first club in New York. And that was kind of a time where you just go along with what they're saying because they know way more than you. And you just do it and you sit there and you learn and you learn and you learn. And then when I moved to Connecticut, it was Gary's way or no way. So it didn't matter. But you learn and you learn and you learn. And I had Candy as well. And Berkshire, kind of like the club, but Candy really helping me with tracking and just kind of taking all that information in. Okay. And then when I moved here, it was okay, I'm gonna listen to Chris and Noel and get their input and then get all these other helpers. And then at some point it's okay, you've had Kira, you've had, I had Jet for a while. I raised, I won't count Helios, but then I had Briscoe. I didn't start Briscoe, but I did compete with him. And then Gigi and now Zakan. And it's okay, well, now you're on dog 5, even though you've only titled 2 of those. Well, 3, I guess. Briscoe, I put the 3 on him. So 3 dogs you've titled. Now it's time to see if you learned something. You can't be a sheep forever. So I paid my dues to be a sheep. And now it's all right, let's see what it do. And with Cosmos, same thing. Okay, Cosmos is a different breed, which is a different learning curve. However, dog behavior is dog behavior. And after watching Otis Jenkins and Cosmos's breeder Garrett has been super helpful when I have ideas to bounce off of him and to make sure I'm on the right path. It's okay, but you know what to do, and he gave you this dog to co-own because he has seen you train and trust you with this dog. So just do what you know how to do. So another kind of ramble, but it is what it is. But that's kind of my thing with this podcast is creating discussion, creating a place where we talk about the rule book. If y'all don't read the rule book, read it often. Read it often. The amount of people that ask me a question, I'm oh, when's the last time you read the rule book? I haven't. Bitch, what? Why? Read the rule book. Every time we go to a trial, actually I have to reprint it because USCA updated their rule book. Every time we go to a trial, I read the rule book. Every time. And I've been slacking the last couple trials. I will say I skimmed the IGP 3 routine. I shouldn't be, especially because I would love the thought of being a judge one day. But now that Zakan's about to trial, I'll be reading that rule book, okay? Every time you go to a trial, read the rule book. Read it. Know where your points are. Know exactly what the rules say, and know how to find it. Because maybe you can't argue it at that moment, but you might be able to argue it later on. Or you just know what you can and can't get away with. Just read the rule book. Read it. But there's a lot of things, as I started to really read the rule book, that I was like, oh, I didn't know that was actually a rule. Like a judge said it, and I was like, is that a rule? Can they say that? Sure enough, it was. So read the rule book. I do want to discuss a lot of stuff in the rule book. Points, where the points are, why we should focus on this one thing and not focus on this, and, you know, the 5-point back transport, my favorite. How many people don't realize it's 5 points? How many people's minds were just blown after I just said that and are like, wait, what? The back transport's 5 points? Yeah. Okay. But also to, like, I do want to kind of, sometimes my vocabulary will be geared towards people who don't know as much about the sport or are still getting into it and still learning, like, the vocabulary that we have here. So I think that's all the rambling I need to do for this introduction. The first couple videos I have are going to be short. So right now, introduction to the side, we are gearing up for our club trial, as well as WDC, the Working Dog Championship, USCA's Working Dog Championship. That's what we're gearing up for right now. AWDF, which is the organization that sends a team to the FCI. So for people who don't know, FCI, WSV. FCI is all the breeds. WSV is German Shepherd dogs. Cool. So AWDF is under FCI. So when you see, like, they follow FCI rules, or you see FCI, that's AWDF. When you see WSV, that's USCA, United Schützen Clubs of America, is under WUSV, as well as like GSDCA. They're under WSV. I don't know a ton about DVG. Maybe I'll have somebody on here who will talk to me about DVG one day. But I'm just trying to stick with these two and just try to learn these two at first. But AWDF, we are members of both organizations. So for our German Shepherd dogs, we are USCA members, because in their scorebook, it says they're German Shepherd dogs. If we ever want to make the German Shepherd dog world team, we would go through USCA to do so. You can also go through GSDCA. And we were GSDCA members in the past, but now we're just USCA members. We are also AWDF members because we are WRSF members for our schnauzers. So the schnauzers have to be under AWDF. So we're a member of both organizations, equal opportunity. Yes, we love that. But so it's really hard though, because, like, although this year they did space it out nicely to where AWDF is what, at least 2 weeks before WDC. So it's nice if you could do both. AWF is in California this year, which is a hike for us East Coasters. We've done it. We did drive to California for, not for AWDF, but for USCA GSD Nationals, and it was super fun, and I do recommend doing that. But in the last couple years, because there was, the way the titles were, you know, there wasn't a lot of recognizing of titles, like WSV and FCI had a split. It didn't matter really when the championships were, unless you had dogs competing for both, or that could compete for both. And so, like, last year, it was like AWDF was one weekend, GSDCA was the next weekend, and WDC was the weekend after that. So you couldn't do all but maybe two of the championships if you were lucky. And it's kind of unfortunate, because the ones who end up hurting are kind of the clubs in a way, because the entries are a little lower than they could be, I feel like. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but when I was first coming up in the sport, I know that, like, AWDF and WDC were at least like a month apart. And the big thing with that is WDC, the Working Dog Championship, is USCA's all breed championship. So USCA has 2 championships, WDC and the GSD National Championship. Obviously, the GSD National Championship is only German Shepherd dogs. So, if you don't have a German Shepherd dog, ain't going there. And you do have to qualify for that. WDC, you don't have to qualify, and you can have any breed. So, you'll see the boxers, you'll see the Malinois there. Because remember, this is a German Shepherd organization. So, you'd see the Malinois, the boxers, the Schnauzers, the Bouviers, the Cane Corsos. I'm missing some. The little Pibbles, Bulldogs, anything you could see there. Rottweilers. The Reaper go. But so you can see all the different breeds there, which is super cool if you only see German Shepherds a lot. Because it's like, ooh, something different. And ideally, it's like the best of the breed, duking it out. But it's just cool to see, like, the Bouviers go and the Dutchies and the, you know, every different breed, and kind of see, like, I think it's really helpful for, like, people newer in the sport, or even anybody in the sport, to really see the differences between the breeds as they work, and see, you know, where the Dobermans, sorry, I forgot the Dobermans, they provide the power, or where, like, certain breed characteristics come into play. And, you know, a lot of times I always love seeing, in my opinion, Dobermans do great obedience, so I always love to see them in obedience. And then I want to see if the Schnauzers are Schnauzers and do a little shake, a little terrier shake, and, you know, the power that people don't expect some of these breeds to have such great power, and they really do. Especially like the boxers. I haven't seen a boxer live yet, and I would love to see that, because it's just cool. It's just cool to see. They're a working breed, and sometimes we forget they are, and then you see them and you're like, okay, you did that. Cool. But that's why I love WDC and AWDF. Those are 2 really fun championships for me anyway to watch. So yeah, so we're prepping for our club trial in WDC. So that's where we're kind of getting everything geared towards. So that's very exciting. Club trial is going to be, I feel like sometimes club trials are more stressed than championship. Because like WDC, we're just going to go compete, right? But a club trial, we have to make sure everything's situated, and who's doing this, and do we have this, and who's being paired together. And so it's like really nerve-wracking. But also, I feel like, you know, people, obviously a lot of times it's your own club members, or people who may never go up to a regional championship or a national championship, and they come to your club to compete. So it's cool to see, like, those people, because it just gives, like, a more, I don't want to say cozy, but, like, home feeling, I guess, in a way. But when you go to these national championships, it's like all these big names, and you're like, I shouldn't even be here. I've lingered too long. But yeah, so club trial we're prepping for. I think Chris is going to do his 1 on Otis Jenkins. I am hopefully going to do my 3 on Gigi. Hopefully pass this time. And possibly a BH on Cosmos. Get that out the way. And then I'd like to do my, if we can arrange it and we do the USP titles, I would do my USP 1 on Zakan possibly. But either way, he will be doing WDC. I would like to do his 1. The plan is for me to do his 1 at WDC, and Chris will show EXO for his 3. And this we're right on the retirement talk for EXO. So conditioning wise is the hard thing. Once they hit a certain age, keeping their conditioning is the hardest thing. Like, he still obviously has the drive to do it, but I feel like it's harder and harder to keep his conditioning up. But I also feel like maybe we've been slacking a little bit, need to get him on the treadmill more. But that's something with working dogs. Like, they always, we took Briscoe out yesterday, and he was just hanging out while people are on the field, just because he's retired at this point. He's 9. But I like to take him out, you know, keep him active. And Chris was like, take him out, let him do some healing. So we did a little bit of healing. He still does the prancy, beautiful steps. And so I threw the dumbbell, you know, a little baby throw. And that little hooligan, he still like goes full on, grab the dumbbell, brings it back, holds it perfectly, and is just like, see? And then when I took the dumbbell, he almost anticipated the finish and then looked at me like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, dude, you still got it, Bubba's. You still got it. And so he did his 2 dumbbell retrieves on the flat that were like 10 feet, but he feels like he did something yesterday, and that's all that really matters. That is the hardest part of this sport. I'll tell you, you get into the sport and you have to retire a dog. Oh, because in his mind, he can do it. And if I take him out there right now and I wasn't like smart enough and I let him go, he'd break himself, because he'd go on the field and he'd do it and he'd be like, oh my gosh, this dog's amazing. And then he'd hobble off the field and not be able to walk. So that's the hard part about this, is when they get older and their brain can do it, but their body can't. So, but I think I've rambled for long enough. So I made my introduction. I see my DJI about to die too, because I forgot to charge it. Good job. But I kind of just wanted to get my introduction filmed and get that out there and figure out how to edit all this, because I know I messed up a few times. And so, yeah. If you have any topics you want to hear us talk about, leave them in the comments. Message me on Instagram, Facebook, whichever. But stay tuned for the next episode of IGP Chronicles. So laters.